Anavah. I could speak for hours about the importance of Anavah, the general importance of Anavah as one of the most fundamental traits of a great Jew, but especially as an additional step coming closer to achieving greatness in Torah. In Tanas Dav Zayin, Torah nimshalo lemayim. Ma mayim manicham mokum gavoya, v'yordim lamokum namuch. Av divrei Torah eino miskaimin, elo b'mishadat ishfela. Water will always find the way down. And that is how we have our rivers and our streams and our creeks. Torah nimshalo lemayim. Torah will always seek out those that are humble. Ma mayim manichem mukim gavoya v'yodim lemakom namuch. Av divrei Torah eino miskaimin elo b'mishadat ishfelo. And we find a similar Mama Chazal in Erev Nun Daled and in Adorm Daf Nun Hey. Ein divrei Torah miskaimin elo b'misha meisen atzmoi aleihem kamidbar. And there are different interpretations. What does it mean, meisem atzmoi kamidbar? The Ran in Masechet Nedorim says, Sheyehei shafol riach biyoisa. So Tanas Dav Zayin, Erev Nun Daled, Nedurim Nun Hey, all these sources teach us that to achieve greatness in Torah, you need to be humble, and humility is one of the fundamental keys. I do not think it is a coincidence when the Torah says, "V'hu ish Moshe onav ma'oid makol odam asher al pnei wadamo." At another opportunity, we will try to understand how is it possible that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person to be a great leader and to navigate the course of Klal Yisrael in such troublesome times, in such difficult periods. You need to have the power, the conviction, the self-confidence of a great leader. Does that contradict being humble? Definitely not. But we'll leave this analysis for another opportunity. What is important for us to understand right now is this is not coincidence. The greatest teacher of Torah ever to be was the greatest Anav, Voish Moshe Anav Ma'oid Makol Odam Asher Al Pnei Wadamo. Because Moshe was the greatest individual ever to live. And that is clear from Bavli, from Yerushalmi, from the Rambam, and from many other sources in Midrash Chazal. He was the greatest Gadol because he was the greatest Anav. He was the greatest Anav because he was the greatest teacher of Torah. And that goes together. In Yerushalmi Daf Samach Tesamed Aleph, there's a beautiful story. Bnei Simonaya came to Rabbeinu HaKadosh to Rebbe, and they had a request. Ten lanu chad barnash, doresh dayan, chazan, safar mitanya. We can't afford to hire a Rav, a Dayan, a Magid, a Moira Hayra to Paskin Shalis. We want one person, and he should be a Ish Eshkoilos, a jack of all trades. No, that's not the right expression. A man that is a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He could be Rosh Hashiva, he could be the Dayan, he could be the Moira Tzedek, he could be the leader of our community. He should teach us halacha and give us inspiration. One individual. Do you know anyone like that? Nosan Lehemes Levi Bar Sisi. Levi was one of Rebbe's greatest disciples. And Rebbe said, I have the one. He can do everything. And he'll faithfully serve your community. They made a huge reception. So it might be strange, bearing in mind today's social norms. Today, when you hire a new Rav and you make a reception, you invite many luminaries and great Rabbonim, and everybody speaks about his greatness and his compliments. Obviously, in days of yore was a different type of ceremony and reception. The entire city came together and everybody asked shilas. We haven't had a Rav for quite a while, so we accumulated many shilas. So the Yerushalmi tells the story. They made a big stage, and the Nurav sat on the stage, and they started asking questions. Gidemis ma'isha tachloitz. If a woman needs chalitza, and she doesn't have hands to take the shoe off the foot of the choylitz, could she still do chalitza? Lo have a biyodei. He simply said, I don't know. Question number two, Yavom Sharoke Kodam Mahi. Lo have a biyodei. He said, I don't know. Amra b'nei Simonaya, dil meleisdein bar ulpan. So they looked at each other, and they were well-mannered. It was somewhat of an embarrassment. They asked him questions. He doesn't know anything. So they said to each other, obviously he's not such a big lamdan, but maybe he's a good maggid. He could give us droshes, he could speak shalashudas, maybe Akvamalava Malka, tell us Sipur Tzadikim. So they asked Pshat and Aposik and Navi, Maidach Siv Haroshim Bidvar Emes. Lo have a biyodei. He said, I don't know. So what do you expect them to do? A new Rav, he's supposed to be a huge Talmud Chochem. That's what Rebbe promised. They asked him once and again, and he says, I don't know. So the ceremony was over. Levi comes back to his lodging, to his hotel room, packs up, leaves town in the middle of the night, and goes back to Tzipoiri, to the yeshiva of Rebbe. And Rebbe gets up in the morning, comes to davening. Wow, a big guest, totally unexpected guest. The Rav of Simonaya came to visit. Rebbe is shocked. And Rebbe said, you got a new job yesterday night. What happened? What are you doing here? And Levi says, Al taskireni tzerosi. Let's not talk about it. It's too painful. But Rebbe persists. Tell me what happened. And Levi tells him the entire story. I was asked one question after another, and it just evaded me. I didn't remember. So Rebbe asks Levi, what did they ask you? Gedemes ma'isha tachloitz. Do you know? Of course I know. Choletzes b'shineo. What was the second question? Yavom Shalaka Kadam. Do you know or don't you know? Of course I know. Chalitza osok sheiro. Yev sheladam below tzich heroik. What else did they ask you? Roshem v'dvar emes. So do you know an answer? Of course I do. Kan koidem gzar din, kan liachar gzar din. So Rebbe is totally taken aback, flabbergasted. And he says, just like you tell me, why didn't you tell them? And then Levi says, a remarkable statement. Bimo gedoyle osuli, vetofach ruchi olai, venishtakho mimeni teirosi. They made a big stage, and I was sitting on the stage, looking down at the entire congregation. I felt so proud. I felt so big. Kodesh Baruch Hu made me forget everything I knew. Kora olav Rebbe es aposuk hazeh im nuvalto behisnasei. You were too proud. You became arrogant. And that is why Kodesh Baruch Hu brought you to be embarrassed, to be ashamed. This story teaches us the connection between Anavah and Torah. A similar story happened in the days of the Chassam Sofer, going back merely 200 years. The Chassam Sofer's predecessor, as the Rav in Pressburg, was the great Rebbe Shulam Igra. Not as famous as the Chassam Sofer, but he was one of the giants of that generation. And the Chassam Sofer once gave a shir in the yeshiva, and he attacked a chiddush of Rebbe Shulam Igra. I assume he did it in a respectful fashion. But suddenly, the Chassam Sofer forgot the continuation of his shir, and he just needed to stop in the middle. And the Chassam Sofer apologized to his Talmidim, and he said, I can't go on. I just forgot what I planned to say. And then the Chassam Sofer said, I think it happened to me because I wasn't enough respectful dealing with the Torah of the Mishul Migra. So the Chassam Sofer went out to the cemetery with a minion of his Talmidim, and he apologized. He asked for mechila from his predecessor, the Mishul Migra. And the other day, came back to the yeshiva and gave the shir in its entirety. Whenever I tell these stories, I ask, why doesn't it ever happen to us? Well, I've been sitting on many big stages. I'm not such a big tzaddik. I might not be such a great Anavah. And it never occurred to me that suddenly I forgot everything I learned. And people ask questions, and I know nothing about what they're talking about. So why doesn't it ever happen to us? I think the answer is a very simple one. When you have a Stradivarius violin that could cost $10 million, and it gets damaged, the sound will not be the same. But if you buy for a kid a little string instrument and you paid $150, and one of the meitarim, one of the strings snaps, well, probably you could tie some, some fishing thread or whatever it is. Won't make that much difference. You buy a bottle of wine that costs you $1,000, and some wines would cost $1,000, and you want to make kiddush, and you're missing, the cup isn't full. So you say, well, Coca-Cola is approximately the same color as red wine. Let's pour in some Coke. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. That cup of wine costs you $150. You put in a drop of Coke, you ruined it. But if you buy a bottle of grape juice for $10, it really makes not that much difference. You could pour in a little Coke, a little Pepsi. Won't change the taste much. It's all the same. Their Torah was pure. Their Torah was holy. Any deficiency in midas had an immediate effect. Our Torah is like the $10 bottle of grape juice. And that is why our Torah is not as precious as theirs. So we do not be aware of the negative effect that any deficiency in Anavah may have. So one of the fundamental kinyan of Torah is Anavah. Anavah is humbleness and humility. And all the great teachers of Torah were paragons of Anavah in the tradition of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that is why Anavah is one of the kinyan of Torah. Have a beautiful day.